Hit record. Welcome everybody to the December System of Care Learning Collaborative. Got a very interesting topic lined up for today. I think most of us know each other, but I do see a few names that are new to me. So maybe we can just invite everyone to introduce yourself in the chat. Does that sound okay for folks? You can share a little bit about your name, your role, why you showed up today, what your connection to System of Care is. For those who I haven't met, I'm Christy. I use she, her pronouns. I'm Transformation Manager with the System of Care Advisory Council and help to host these learning collaboratives with the help of Carol Dickey and Chrissy, who I don't see here today, and OHA staff, Hillary and Christiana. So really glad that you can make it. Today we're going to talk a little bit about results from a partnership survey that the System of Care Advisory Council recently fielded to our regional System of Care partners this fall, and use that to kind of explore how we can strengthen our partners in this work. I do have a short slideshow that I will pull up. Give me a second. If I can do the fancy thing where it, are you looking at the slide deck or the presenter?
Looking at the slide deck. Christy, before we get started, I have one question just in case. Do you have any announcements you want to make, particularly around grants or anything that you need to say while most people are here? I know some people are saying they're dropping off at different points.
Oh, I don't think so. We had the informational webinar last Wednesday. We had a pretty good turnout there. So I guess if people have questions, they want to put those in the chat or share them out before we get started.
I don't know whether anyone else has announcements. I need to announce that Oregon has a new kid governor. And if you haven't kept up with the kid governor, this one is all about children's mental health. And I will put the link in a chat in a minute to her inauguration. And the kids team is really hoping that we will get to work with our new governor as she comes into her role in the middle to late January.
Wow.
So that's kind of exciting. That's a fifth grader, and they have a whole election process to set up a kid governor, and there are like 7 or 8 that fifth graders vote for, and she won on her mental health platform. So that's pretty cool. So I know, Selby, I know I'm like all over this kid governor thing. The kids team was going to go to her inauguration, and we're very unhappy because there will be no public participation that day, because they don't have the fire marshal numbers on how many they can have in the room. So no guests allowed, but we were all going to go and be there for her.
Wow. I had no idea. That's very exciting. Thanks for sharing, Hillary. Any other updates or announcements people want to make before we jump in?
Hi, I was just going to say, I'm going to put it in the chat, but we have the respite surveys going out right now. And so if you haven't taken it or given it to people, that would be great if you could.
Thanks, Ramona.
And I didn't introduce her, but Molly is with us today. Molly Sandmeyer is our new fellow who is going to be doing some youth engagement around the strategy work that the kids team is doing at the moment from OHA. So it may be that you'll be hearing from me. Say hello, Molly.
Hi, nice to meet you guys. Sorry, I was eating, so I didn't want you guys to see that. Anyway, nice to meet everyone.
Thanks for being here, Molly. All right, let's dig in. So yeah, here's the plan for today. I'm going to share out a little, some of the high level results from this partnership survey that the System of Care Advisory Council fielded. And then, so I have a few slides to share some of the data, but, you know, like most of our learning collaboratives, this is really a space for you all to get together and share and connect and learn from one another. So we'll hopefully be spending a lot of time in conversation and breakouts. And that really, I'm here to listen for ways that your ideas are on strategies for strengthening partnerships, both at the state and the local level, because we know that this work really centers and relies on our cross-sector partners. So this fall, the System of Care Advisory Council put out a survey. Per CCO contract that OHA holds, the System of Care governance structure must include representatives of, quote, public child serving agencies, meaning child welfare, education, juvenile justice, Oregon Youth Authority, tribal communities, intellectual and developmental disabilities, and behavioral health partners, and must also include meaningful participation from youth and family members. The contract also stipulates governance structures must include these representatives on 3 distinct bodies in the region, those being executive councils, the advisory committees, and practice level work groups. SOCAC was really interested and curious about what these partnerships and what the representation from these various partners look like. So we put out a survey to all of our regional System of Care coordinators and asked you all about who was represented within these governance structures. So the purpose of the survey was to assess presence and strength of family and youth engagement, of culturally and linguistically responsive partners, of the presence and strength of cross-sector partners, and again, all of that really to inform state and local partnership development that the SOCAC is interested in undertaking. So we sent out an online survey. We sent it to every designated System of Care coordinator in each of the 14 System of Care regions. And we asked you to rate or to indicate the strength, the existence and strength of these partners on each of your bodies. So on your executive councils, on your advisory committees and practice level work groups, how were these people showing up? And you had options, 4 options. Did they provide leadership or resources? Did they attend regularly, or were they a voting member? Did they attend only 1 or 2 times a year, or were they not represented at all? So you had 4 options, and then there was also some space to leave some open-ended kind of comments or other things you wanted us to know about that particular group. We asked only 1 person from each CCO convened structure to respond, and in areas where your regional System of Care works across multiple counties and or more than 1 executive council, advisory committee, or practice level work group was convened, we requested a response from each county and area. Sometimes that worked, sometimes it didn't work. I see Chris just joined. I know that would have been a very big ask for you, Chris. So the findings are not, the denominator is not 14 regions. The denominator is the number of responses we got. Yeah, so this, everyone responded except 4 regions. So we got a pretty good response on the survey. So let's get into the results. So for family and youth engagement, an active engagement means the person held a leadership position, or they contributed resources, or were actively attending, or were a voting member. And so you can see, well, 100% is the goal here with that red line. Family and youth were engaged, actively engaged in about half of the governance bodies, with 64% of executive councils identifying active engagement from family, to less than 1/3 of executive councils having youth actively engaged. And then you can see for the participation on the advisory councils in the green bars and the practice level work groups in the orange bars, about half of those had active engagement from family and from youth. cross-sector partner engagement. So mental health, as you can see on the left side here, is strongly represented across all groups, the executive councils being blue, the advisory committees in green, practice level work groups in orange. So mental health was strongly represented, followed closely by child welfare, but from there participation really tapers off for the other partners, particularly education, county juvenile justice partners, and partners from intellectual and developmental disability world, actively engaged on, about half of those bodies. And then participation from OIA and tribes, very sparsely, only a few bodies identified that those partners were actively engaged. So although not specifically called out in contract, the survey also asked about the presence of culturally and linguistically responsive providers, given the inequities within our system and our shared value of building a culturally and linguistically responsive system. It's going to be pretty difficult, if not impossible, to attend to our shared value without the presence of these partners in our system's work. So as illustrated by the dashed red line at the top here, the vision is that these types of organizations would be actively engaged on 100% of committees and councils. And you can see that we are very far from that. So notably, no Black-led community-based organizations and only 2 tribal-led community-based organizations are participating in any of the systems of care responded to the survey. Only a handful more of Latinx-led CBOs and LGBT plus led CBOs are actively engaged in a few, particularly at the practice level work group level. And finally, other partner engagement. So, also not stipulated in contract, we know that lots of other cross-sector partners can also play a really important role in our system work. So we also asked you about the presence and engagement of other partners like self-sufficiency partners, substance use providers, school-based health centers, early childhood, housing, hospitals. And so while some of these partners, particularly early childhood, is very present, especially on the executive councils, substance use providers are present, particularly on advisory committees and practice level work groups. Other partners, particularly parks and recreation, law enforcement, jails, even hospitals were rarely participating in any of these bodies. And finally, we had one question that asked about whether your wraparound review committee is functioning as your practice level work group. And of those that responded, only 2 shared that yes, that you had combined those groups. So that was a lot of data. I'm happy to answer any questions or go back to any slides if you want to see anything else again. Yeah, wondering, do you have any questions about the data? And then what are your reactions to these results? Are you surprised by anything? What are your immediate reactions?
Can you remind me how many people replied to the survey?
We got a response from all but 4 of the regions.
So that means you had, so there are 14, so you had 9 or 10 responses?
No, because some counties, some regions responded more than one time. So if they had, except for Chris, yeah, so for example, if folks regions covered more than one county, or they had more than one executive council, if they had more than one practice level work group in their region, they were asked to complete the survey more than once and indicate for what county they were responding. But to your point, Hillary, the denominator is quite low, hovering maybe 10, 11, 13 for some of these
So
charts.
probably this is information for half the state, maybe the folks who are on this call, but not others who aren't here, or?
I mean, I could tell you that the regions that didn't respond, I did not get a response from Douglas County, the Columbia Gorge, Klamath County, and Curry County.
Okay, all right, thank you. So not too bad then, but yeah, thank you.
Christy, was there information collected on the why of this? Was
Mhm.
because was it that folks reached out to those that need to be at the table and are unable to get participation, or is there just not? I mean, what were the reasons for the lack of full participation in these groups?
Oh, like what were the barriers to participation? Yeah, that we did not ask about. That was part of the conversation I was hoping we would have today. Yes, I think it was Selby and then Haley.
Yeah, just because I'm going to switch to listening by phone in a moment. We have to go to Clackamas Youth Drop today. We are actually having a system of care youth activity, speaking of engagement. So, but I'll be listening in. So I just thought I'd speak right now real quick. I think probably these results surprise none of us, and the deficiencies are obvious and the need is clear. I think it's just, you know, to Carol's question, it's kind of just creating the staff time or the support that's needed, you know, that just, yeah, it's just with shifting work priorities. I keep telling my own executive council that where youth and family engagement is happening successfully, it's because there's a dedicated staff person for it. And I know that for like our youth project today, it was all that was really made possible because I had the support of an intern. So I think it's just kind of all the different priorities that people try to juggle. And it's unfortunate that recruitment is something that kind of seems to get pushed down. And I don't know if that's because of pressures where we have like deliverables that are officially due to OHA, or just sometimes I feel like I'm just running from meeting to meeting. At least this past year with the consultant, like whatever meeting was in front of my face, like that's all I saw in terms of the next priority, and it was hard to pick up things on the side. So I think staffing challenges. And then my final thought would be, I think for me too, that in the past when I have been able to pick up recruitment as kind of a priority issue, it always feels a little overwhelming to be told you have to have one recruitment stream and language and material product development for youth, one that's geared to families, and one that's geared to your agency partners. And so to come up with 3 like sets of products and 3 approaches and different slideshows, that's always felt a little overwhelming and challenging as well, although I certainly recognize the need. But anyway, that's always been real challenging, feeling like you can't just kind of have one nice thing you share. You can. I mean, I know it's not impossible, but that's always been a challenge for me too, is feeling like there's actually 3 recruitment roles and not just one. So that's my 2 cents anyway.
Thanks,
But
Dawn.
yes, happy. But anyway, very willing to. I'm hoping for something different this next year. As Carol knows, we have a new plan and some hopes around it. But anyway, thanks for it's interesting to see the results and how I feel like they're actually fairly consistent across the state, same challenge areas and deficiencies and partners in the same areas.
I'd like to piggyback off of Selby. I don't have much to say that's different, but I will say the feeling I got when I saw those results was relief, because it's a concern, right? That's like, oh, is Lane County really behind in this, right? So it's a mixed bag of emotions, and one of them is relief. But just to piggyback a little bit on Selby, and also recognizing as a somewhat newer SOC coordinator, right? So I'm going on a little bit over 1.5 years in this role. At first, my push was really on outreach and bringing people to the table, and that in itself was a full-time job. And then I very quickly realized we were getting people to the table and then immediately losing them because people didn't really like, I don't want to toot my own horn, but I'm very good at selling what the table is supposed to be about. But then if that's not happening at the table, well, people are like, wah, wah, and leaving. And this is more speaking towards community partners or partnering agencies, not necessarily family and youth. Because I feel like it's really, like Selby said, it's 3 different products. It's 3 different ways of approaching how you go about that recruitment with the same like message and values being present, but how you package is a little different. And where we're at now with our SOC is we're not pushing on recruitment unless it's family and youth, in which we are very fortunate to have a very large youth voice. And I am the person who kind of helps coordinate and facilitate that. And that takes up a good amount of my time, which I don't necessarily have the same amount of time to do for family or community partners. It's kind of like, okay, which one can I focus on this year? And then trying to make that get to a point where it could be sustainable in order to pivot and focus on another. I have to say, and I mean, no disrespect to the structure that is the system of care, I think whoever designs this model and how it would operate in Oregon was incorrect as far as it relying on a role that is a singular system of care coordinator. I myself am fortunate enough to have a little bit of team support, in which I know so many of you don't, and I still struggle to stay on top of all the different tasks that are associated with becoming a SOC coordinator. So it's really hard for a type A person such as myself to do, but I really had to put recruitment down in order to do all of the other amazing work and that will keep people at the table when we are able to recruit them. So my hope in this role and in the system of care and in having conversations such as this is that we will point to some of the flaws that are within the system of care. And one of them is expecting a singular person or even a very small team to be able to do all the important work that makes up a system of care, collaborative structure.
Thanks, Haley.
Can I quickly address Carol's comment about if there are different recruitment materials or strategies, right? I'll just say that my youth interns, when they saw some of the materials I was trying to use to recruit youth, they were like, Haley, no, this is so boring, no. So it's not that the messaging, it's just how it's packaged. My youth stuff has more memes. My family stuff has more things that's going to be like, your voice matters. And my community partner stuff is really harping on like the family and youth component, right? So messaging ultimately the same, just how it's all tied up with ribbons is a little different.
Yeah, I sort of, you know, I've seen that and I know that, and I know that people have different preferences for receiving information. I do think, though, that it all inures to the culture around the table as well. And I don't know what the, you know, maybe
I'm listening to a meeting and trying to pack up.
Maybe health literacy standards could be used as guidelines. I don't know. I mean, I don't know what the solution is, but I know that there are that the differences ring through in the conversations as well. But I understand what you're saying, Haley.
Okay, so I'm hearing not a lot of surprise, folks feeling validated, and that this really points to kind of the impossible task that we've asked our system of care, our regional system of care partners to do for this important work. It's just not enough resources to put this all on one person.
Can I just make a comment? Because I hear you saying we're not giving you enough resources, et cetera, et cetera. I want to challenge that, again, coming back to system of care principles, that your CCOs can choose to prioritize children's mental health. And what we've seen in somewhere like IHN has been that cross collaboration for them to establish a separate role, which is Jennifer Schwartz. And so it isn't, the responsibility and the money lies within the CCOs to put emphasis into this area to get better outcomes for kids. It isn't all about the state doing or setting up some structure that you would all follow. And so I just want to take that opportunity to say there is money in the system, and money did go to CCOs around as part of the overall budgets for system of care. It's then up to them how they do their global budgeting. So you see some areas making that one person and other areas saying it's 10% of someone's time. And, you know, you look at Chris and her team and how much money and effort is being invested by EOCCO, and you make a comparison with some of the other areas and it's very different. And so I think there's also a piece that just I want to just pull up to say it's also about your region and that advocacy potentially locally that is important around the priority on children's issues. So sorry, Christy, but just wanted to give that caveat, because I think a lot of the time we just sort of accept that, oh, it's not happening, but there is a bigger story too that it's important to think about.
Yeah, thanks, Hillary. I think that's a nice segue into our breakout questions, because we are curious to kind of hear what your ideas are and how we, SOCAC and OHA, can be a support to you in this work. So got 3 questions for you all to think about. We're going to move you into breakout rooms for a few minutes. So when you think about the partners that we asked about in the survey, what partners have been easy to engage? What partners have been difficult to engage? Why do you think that is? Why are the easy partners easy and the more difficult partners difficult? What do you want to do as a result of this data? Does it inspire you to think about your partnership or recruitment differently? What partners do you want to prioritize engaging for your region? I'm thinking specifically about the grants that you're all working on. They're top of mind, and our required investments in both youth and family engagement and diversity, equity, inclusion, and how that work, those activities can improve some of these results. And then finally, how can System of Care Advisory Council and OHA be a support to your partnership development efforts? How can we make this easier for you? What supports do you need? You know, everything from modifying the CCO contract language to give you a little bit more flexibility about how you bring those groups together. There's an annual opportunity to modify those contracts. That's in February. So your ideas, you share here today could inform kind of what we ask OHA to do differently. Our cross-sector accountability was also commonly mentioned in some of the open-ended responses. You know, SOCAC has all of these agencies, many of these agencies participating on our council. How can we use those folks to leverage what this relationship building looks like locally? I think there's a lot of opportunities here, and would love to hear your thoughts on it. So I am going to put you all into some breakout rooms for maybe 10, 15 minutes. And yeah, if once you get in there, if somebody can be prepared to report out when we bring people back together, that would be great. So any questions before we zoom you out? And yes, I will share the questions in the chat once you get into the breakout room too. All right, welcome back. I always take it as a good sign when people stay to the very end. So I'm really excited to hear everything y'all talked about. All right. How about we start with room 2 on my list? That was Amanda, Carol, Denise, and Mariella.
I'm happy to do a little report out if you all are okay with that. Okay. So we talked, let me pull the questions up just so that I've got them as well. So some of the barriers that we talked about, or what has been, how it's been difficult to engage, is really needing to engage the people that are showing up already, or who are, identified as those who want to come to meetings, and helping to kind of re-engage that group first. It's been at least within the the county that I'm working in, there's been a lot of turnover in the last several years. And so needing to just get everybody on the same page about what system of care is and its purpose and how we can work together and collaboratively and what some of those outcomes are. So we talked about that. Some of the difficulties as well is that there's lots of different timing aspects, many different cultures to work within and make sure that we're engaging and so just kind of needing to navigate all of those pieces. Those were some of the barriers and difficulties that we kind of identified. Anything else that I missed?
You're muted, Christy, if you're talking.
Sure am. Thanks, Haley. Just verifying that there was nobody else from that group that had anything else to add. Okay, thank you, Denise and all. I'm here putting the questions back in the chat here for us. All right, group. Well, Haley's group, since I saw your message that you would like, you're gonna have to jump off here. Do you want to go ahead? That was
Yes, please.
Haley, Danny, Heather, and Isaiah.
Yes, a powerful crew. We had some great conversation. We did go until the last second. So folks that were in there with me, jump in if I missed anything. I took notes. I can send them to you, Christy, if you want them. But most of us agreed that schools are hard for us all to engage. We reiterated the idea, and this is for the question number one, which partners have been easy to engage, difficult to engage. We talked about why partners like education, juvenile justice, and others might be difficult to engage. And a lot of that has to do with some of the strains that they're experiencing within their workforce, as well as just kind of the unrealistic workload that's placed on our educators and administrators in that realm, as well as our juvenile justice providers. And the same could be applied to any of the system partners that we worked with. We also talked about, with family and youth and how it's a real art form to be able to have a space, including the time, the date and the time that works for family, youth, and community partners. Shout out, and also a begging please to let us know if you figured out a magical like cadence that works for you all. And in the meantime, we just continue to try to trial different ways that's true authentic participation, with family and youth being the majority in that space. We talked about one of the reasons that it's difficult to engage all community partners and also family and youth is the SOC is super theoretical and it's philosophical, and it says it right there in that primer, right? Like the system of care is based on a philosophy, that about sums it up, right? So it's hard for folks to grasp onto, and especially when you're talking about, we have the state system of care, we have our region, and then there are other regions. And I know one of my recent SOC members was like, we don't have like anything we're supposed to be working on. We're not required to do anything. And then I've got others that are like, thank goodness we're not required to do anything. So it's kind of like trying to please everyone, right? Which is just impossible. So nobody do that. Don't do that. And then as far as another piece here is that each system of care looks different than another. So really, and this kind of answers other questions as well, but like not focusing so much on what just happens at a system of care table, like a committee table, but you as a system of care coordinator or system of care team member being seen as a go-to for your region to connect some of these siloed pieces, like that's a win for the system of care. And that's not necessarily like represented when you look at who's coming to the table. Sometimes those tables are happening in different spaces, and smaller tables or bigger tables, but they don't fall under the category of being one of those traditional like 3 committee meetings, right? We also had a really good point from Isaiah. Those of you that weren't fortunate enough to hear Isaiah's presentation back when he was working under a fellowship with us all about kind of like the fiscal impacts related to the system of care, and just being able to see it on paper of when it comes to a funding or fiscal kind of lens, that the silos make it difficult for some of this work to go on, which, we've all got our work cut out for us. So it was really cool to have Isaiah in that space. And then very briefly, what do you want to do as a result of this idea? For me, it's focusing on that family and youth piece. For others in this space, it was we're continuing the course that we've set, which is we're focusing on what the work is, like what it is that we do here, including a strategic plan, and not worrying so much about recruitment at this juncture. And then I really liked what one of our other group members said was like, stop reinventing wheels that already exist, right? And like what's already going on in the community, like where can we like bring the SOC to that space and vice versa. And then we honestly didn't get to the last piece, so I didn't get to run this by my amazing crew. But for that question about how can the SOCAC and OHA be a support to your partnership development efforts, I put a little something in the chat earlier. While I completely agree with Hillary that how this work is done in a region or a county really should lie with the CCOs, I do think having some guidance from OHA and SOCAC, like kind of best practices, as in like a SOC coordinator may not be enough. You may need a youth and family engagement specialist. You may need or even like ways to navigate really imparting on our system of care members, like the ownership lies with them too. And then the one other piece, and I think this has been talked about in several of our SOC spaces before, that it would go a long way to have some of our systems partners required to participate in the system of care structure, right? It would definitely leave me feeling less like a used car salesman all the time. I'm like, look at this latest model of the SOC, right? So anything like that would be very helpful. And shout out to my group, and also please jump in, group, if I missed or misrepresented anything.
That was beautiful, Haley. Thank you.
Thanks, Haley, and all. All right. Last group was Carissa, Chris, Rose, Sarah, and Tracy.
And I can report out because I agreed to do that. So we talked about the easy to engage is pretty much mental health across the board. They're so invested in keeping collaboration open and helping youth and families, so they're pretty easy to engage. I want to say, for the most part, like I have one county that the local mental health is not easy to engage, but that's across the board. It is difficult to engage. We had schools and child welfare, and they're super busy, and time conflict is a big one. So if you do it in the evening where maybe youth and family can come, schools, like we can't be there after 4:30 because it's not in our contract. And so as far as like, you'll get a lot of that. Just getting them to the table is a little bit harder. Child welfare also, it's different for different counties across Oregon, where child welfare is great in some counties, and then in some they're like, we are overworked and underpaid, and this is really hard to make the time and the effort. One of the things we did notice is there are so many groups. So we're talking about CACs, LCHIPs, Early Learning Center, Cradle to Career, all of those people, all of those committees are vying for the same people's attention. And so there just isn't enough people or time for every person. So if I need a director, and that director needs to be the director of the juvenile department in Baker, then she's also attending Early Learning and Cradle to Career, and she's not attending the CAC or the LCHIP, so she'll come, and she comes to Systems of Care. But when you look at that by all of our counties, like we're all doing the exact same work, and everybody has requirements to do it differently or to do it in their own silo. So that's probably our biggest, like, why people are difficult to get to come to the table. And then what do you want as a result of this data? We were like, we would like to put this data on hold until the grant and our respite request is finished and come back to the table. Just because we're trying to multitask, and I probably have the largest team. So I don't know how people who don't have a team as large as mine manage to get all the things done. And then what partners do you want to prioritize for engaging the region? For some, it was families, where they were struggling to get families to the table. And then Kairos would love to see more schools at the table. And for us, like in Eastern Oregon, it's a little bit of everybody in every county. So there wasn't a specific one kind of group of people. And then if the system partners at SOCAC went to their regions and said, you need to connect to your local systems of care people. So if the state SOCAC reined it down and said, somebody from every one of their should be sitting on their local, wherever it is, whether it's Baker, whether it's Tillamook, it doesn't matter. And so that needs to probably come down from the top.
Mm-hmm.
And that's probably one of the biggest ways that SOCAC could help us.
Mm-hmm. I love that idea, Chris. Thank you. All right, anybody else from that group, or just open it up to any other comments that people want to share out that didn't get raised? I thought you all had lots of great thoughts. So one thing that we, meaning I guess myself and Anna have, and Hillary, I think a little bit with, we looked at this with Nat before they left, was exploring modifications to the CCO contract. And Chris, you touched on this a little bit about like, how do we make the best use of everyone's time, given that we've got lots of tables having similar conversations. You know, if the contract was less prescriptive of the 3 levels of the specific people that you needed, like, would you like that? Would you hate that? What would your feelings be about that type of change? Being more flexible, kind of like, you know, here's what a system of care is. You all figure out within your region what that looks like.
I love that, because we've kind of changed things up since we've had our consultation, and I think it's really helped with our with people the people that are involved feeling very involved with having our critical shift work groups, rather than being prescriptive on having. I mean, we have an executive council. Our advisory council is really called a design team now, and they kind of shepherd the work going forward. And then we have our practice level work group, but we have these other groups. So I think it's been, I feel like in the last year, we've done more than we had in the 2 years previous. And I know we just got started, but it seems like to me, being less prescriptive of the governance structure would be better. I do feel like what Chris was saying, like it would be nice if SOCAC kind of did say, you know, you all need to put people on your systems of care in your local regions. I do like that, though.
Yeah. And I think just as like a next step from SOCAC is that I think these results, you know, I saw Adam has stepped off, but would love to share these results, particularly at the state agency standing committee, and really use that as a launching ground for, okay, state agency partners, like what can you do, you know, to get people to these regional tables. So just thinking about that, like, is there some sort of multi-step process that makes sense, right? Like, do we need to kind of let you all change the structure before we do that? Maybe I'm overthinking it, but
so I guess I could shout a little bit in my 12 counties. What I see is everybody at the practice level work groups are pretty passionate. But my practice level work groups and my review committees are combined. And so they're on the ground workers, they're doing things. And then what I have is a regional committee, or like an executive committee. And the executive committee they would like to not have to exist. Like, I could do it as a regional and pull it together where it's like, you belong to the regional, and when I need you guys to come and look at things, and we could do that. But to get rid of that, like that requirement of an executive committee in, say, Baker County, and that all barriers would just come in any of our counties, but just come up through, and everybody in the region would see the barrier, right? Everybody would sign off and say, yep, that's Harney County, yep, and be able to just say as a regional. I think that would make it a little, in Eastern Oregon, that would make it a lot easier than trying to hold, again, because you have these little tiny counties that, so like Sherman County, the director of the juvenile department is on the practice level work group. there's no one higher than her. And so like, that's just like, things are going to get done at that level, and there's no need to take it any higher. And in fact, they get cranky if you try to. So just saying that. But I would love to get rid of a layer.
So Chris, there's nothing that says you have to have them at in every county. It's a CCO level, so you could immediately get rid of those executive levels and just have one at the one central one. Yeah. If you look at the IHN model, they've got one executive committee for the 3 counties. So please don't feel that we're saying you have to do that in each county. I think that's historically the way it was when it was a county structure before CCOs, but certainly now, you know, we're not going to stand in your way. And
however, I've got one county that their executive meets monthly for lunch every month, and they are like doing great work. So I wouldn't get rid of them because they're like,
right.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that speaks actually to what we're after here, really, doesn't it? You know, it's like, where are the passion and where are the people with the money? And if your people with the money are having lunch once a month and talking about it, you can bet they're getting work done that is important to your region. And how do we create those tables where those people care about kids and therefore make those policy decisions that we need? And so it's that balance. And Tracy, I'm really excited to hear that your executive council is feeling more sort of ready and operative. But it's, you know, it's again, how do we light the flames and then keep them going? Because we know that we can start it and then, you know, people leave and suddenly it's a really different animal and we could sort of start all over again, don't we? So yeah, but love the conversation.
Hi, this is Selby. I'm on the phone and I can't see if anyone has a hand raised, but I wondered if I could join the queue for speakers.
Yeah, Selby, you're on.
Okay, so this is kind of reflective of Christy's earlier question and the idea of SOCAC sending out a letter, encouraging different system partners to send representatives to system of care. And so when we were working with our consultant this past year, he was always talking to me about the need to engage the power brokers. And so as a part of that process, I sent out surveys to my committee members and I mimicked the contract language, in particular for advisory committee and executive council, where it states in the contract that they need to have authority over policy and funding making decisions. And so I asked them that, do you have that authority? And their options to respond were yes, no, and it depends what you're asking me. And by far and large, the majority of responses was, well, it depends what you're asking me. So even though I have what I would consider great regional leadership at the table, I mean, there's still always like somebody even above them. And so then it becomes a question of having to do a lot of messaging with my members about speaking to their leadership, and that the commitment to system of care has to go beyond the table. And I'm still kind of working about what it means to engage the power structure, but that's part of it. And then another thing that I've started to do is offer leadership orientation, so that when I have a new agency partner join, I'm trying to request that their supervisor or leadership join the orientation with them. And that's been kind of an interesting experience to be doing that at that level. And then the other thing I'm working on that I'm going to do in January, we're having a big party launch celebration for the new year, but I'm trying to collect all of the supervisory information for every single one of my members and give them a certificate of appreciation and to copy their supervisor on that certificate of appreciation and talk about how valuable it is, the staff time that they are giving, allowing their staff person to come and participate in system of care and how valuable it is and what our goals is. But like, again, that's, you know, we're talking about engagement. So that's obviously agency partner engagement, not youth and family. But anyway, it's just kind of leading to all of that. So you kind of, it seems like there's multiple channels we need to go to, but I'm hoping that I can get new forms of engagement or that leadership buy-in to recognize the value of their staff time coming through taking these different actions. So those are some new things I'm trying. Thank you. That's all.
Great, thanks, Selby. Anyone else have wisdom or thoughts to share? All right.
Oh,
Oh,
I was just gonna say, we're also having in January, so we do everything by Zoom. And in January, last year we had one, and this year we're having another, just all network, everybody come and having breakfast and lunch, and when we're reporting out on our work groups, and then we're having networking time so folks can network, and then kind of just taking a temperature at the end of like, are we on the right track, or do we need to move this way or that way, and that sort of thing. So I'm excited about that. That's in January. And Selby, when are you going to have time to do all of your letters? I mean, I think that's so great, but I need to talk to you offline about that, because I think that's important too, to celebrate the people that do show up, because they do a lot of work. So yeah.
Yeah, I scheduled a party at the end of January to give myself the time to get all this together. So it'll be a push for sure, but I'm excited.
Yeah, thanks for the invite, Selby. Saw that come in. Okay, well, I recognize we've lost a few people, and we're running kind of into the afternoon here. We're all pretty tired from a long day. So just want to share back some of the themes that I've heard from you all, which is just, you know, that there's a balance for you in kind of the work that it takes to maintain the partners that you do have, particularly coming out of COVID still, and some of the relationships that were lost during the pandemic. So trying to nurture the folks who are still showing up and engaged, and also kind of stepping back to see about, you know, what other partners are available and interested in this work. So really liked that. We talked a little bit about some of the partners that are more difficult to engage, particularly schools and juvenile justice, youth and family continuing to be kind of a difficult folks to bring into these spaces that, you know, so if anyone's got like identified the magic hour that works for family and youth, please do share it. Talked a lot about not inventing wheels and kind of leveraging the groups that are already there. And then I'm particularly excited about some of the recommendations you had for SOCAC. So definitely, Hillary would love to bring this conversation forward to OHA around making some revisions to the CCO contract and trying to make that less prescriptive. We'll definitely be bringing this to the state agency standing committee meeting next year at some point, and look forward to our state agency partners' ideas about how to encourage relationships and participation through those various sectors. I'm also really excited. So tomorrow, the SOCAC's new youth and family engagement coordinator starts, which is super exciting. Yes. Been like over a year of dreaming about this, and it's hard to believe that it's coming. So Joylene Carter will be joining us tomorrow. She's amazing. I had the honor of working with her a little bit in the public health division, and she's just fabulous. And part of her scope will be kind of learning all the great work that you do locally to engage youth and family, and kind of leveraging that, sharing that, building off of that. So she'll definitely be reaching out to connect with you about your youth and family engagement efforts, and understanding how to support you more in that. Yeah, there's so much great work. So thank you so much for joining us. I will share the recording. I'll share the slides. You can share that with your partners, if you want to continue having this conversation with your folks locally. And with that, we'll see you in 2024. Selby is joining the planning committee for these groups. So if you have ideas about ways you want to use this learning collaborative space, you can tell Selby and she will tell the planning group.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Have a good end of the year.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.